win the NFC North this year. Sites have it that the Lions have an 80% chance of winning the NFC North after winning Sunday against the from the New Orleans Saints. I'll tell you. That leaves Minnesota and Green Bay with the other 20%, 19.99999% to win the NFC North. I say that because for some damn reason, Chicago is still mathematically still alive in the playoff hunt. I don't know how the fuck that's possible, but the NFL website still has them alive in the NFL playoffs. But that will go away this weekend when they lose against the Lions, because we all know they're going to lose against the Lions. Because the Bears are just a mess. They've been a mess for the past 2 years. I don't know what's happened to them. And the Lions, they're a mess too. They suck statistically. They're one of the worst teams statistically, and yet they sit at 8-4, potentially going 9-4 after Sunday. I don't know what's happening to them. The Lions, they're not lucky. You cannot say they're lucky. If they won the games that they did once or twice, you can say they're lucky. But winning it 7 times the way they did was not luck. Even though the last game, they didn't have to come back, which is why I didn't say 8 times. But let's see here. The Vikings take on the Jaguars. The Jags, they're not good. The Vikings are going to win. They're going to win. I don't know, actually. If the Jags put up a good fight, they could win. I mean, Minnesota is collapsing. After their 5-0 start, they've been going downhill from there. It's all downhill for Minnesota. Green Bay. See, here's what Detroit really needs to be afraid of, is Green Bay. Green Bay has been winning 2 consecutive games, and they're more likely to win. They're more likely to catch up to Detroit than anyone else in the division. Minnesota, more than not, they lose on Sunday. If Detroit wins Sunday, then Minnesota's done. That turns from a 3-division race into a 2-way race. All right, let's be honest. Even without the division, Detroit still has an 89.9% chance of winning the playoffs. Going into the playoffs, that's pretty damn good for considering how bad the Lions have been going into this year. After 1-3, when they had a 12%, where they had like a 10% chance of getting into the playoffs at 1-3, they now have an 89.9% chance. Let's get to Green Bay. Green Bay is at Seattle. Seattle comes into Green Bay, come into their house in about twilight, 4:25 Eastern Time, somewhere around there. And we all know we want this. Detroit wants Green Bay to lose. We all know that. Because if Detroit wins, and if Green Bay loses, that puts Detroit up 3 games against Green Bay. Therefore, Detroit would have to lose the next 2 games, and then lose the next 3 games in order for Green Bay to win the division. If, say, Detroit loses the next 2 games and Green Bay wins the next 2 games after the Seattle game, then that puts pressure on Detroit to beat Green Bay on the final regular season game of the 2016 NFL season. Let's also put it in this scenario. If Detroit wins against Chicago, and the Giants 2 games in a row. They win 2 games in a row, and Green Bay wins. Green Bay loses against the Seahawks. It doesn't matter what happens the last 3 games of Green Bay's 2016 NFL season. Or it doesn't matter what happens in the Lions' last 2 games. As long as the Lions win the next 2 games and Green Bay loses against the Seattle, then the Lions clinch the playoffs. They can clinch the playoffs as early as 1 week from Sunday. They can clinch the division as early as 1 week from Sunday for the first time since 1993. And the way they played last Sunday, that is easily a good chance. Against the Giants, easily a good chance. I hope Seattle beats Green Bay bad. I hope the momentum from the winning streak dies. Do I think it's going to die? No. Do I think they're going to win? Even if they don't win on Sunday, do you think it's going to die? No. I think it's just going to be a 1-loss game, and then they're going to be right back up there. They're going to be winning again. I mean, some say that they want Green Bay to win just because they can take the 2 seed. But think about that. Seattle has an easier schedule than Detroit. Strength of schedule. So they're just going to end up back into 2 seed anyways. Unless Detroit wins out. That's the only way. So Minnesota is basically done when Detroit loses. When Detroit wins, if Detroit wins, which they should, the Minnesota's done. Because that puts Detroit 3 games ahead of Minnesota. Even though it says 2, they still have the tiebreaker. I puts them 3 games ahead. And Detroit loses. Detroit wins. Green Bay loses. That puts them 3 games ahead. That means Green Bay has to win out in order to still win the division if they lose on Sunday and Detroit wins on Sunday. Detroit wins on Sunday plus against the Giants. Green Bay loses Sunday. Detroit clinches the division. They can do that a week from Sunday. That's amazing. If that happens, that's probably going to be the biggest day in sports in Detroit since the Super Bowl in 2006. I have never been talking about Chicago because Chicago, they're done. I don't know. They're probably done for the rest of the 21st century. For as long as Jay Cutler is and the town is in, they're done. So, Green Bay has Seahawks, Minnesota, Chicago. They're going to win against Chicago. And Detroit. I really don't hope it comes down to that day. I don't really hope it comes down to that day. But I'll tell you, if it does come down to that day, then it'll be pretty damn intense. Because I think it was the last time Detroit was in the playoffs, 2014. I think that came down to that day too, when Detroit was at Green Bay. I don't want it to be I don't think any Detroit fan wants it to be one of those games again. Because we all know when Green Bay decided to do a Hail Mary at the end of the game and they won barely, because that's how damn good Aaron Rodgers is. So, Detroit over Minnesota, Detroit over Chicago, Minnesota over Jacksonville, Seahawks over, I'm giving Seahawks over the edge of Green Bay. Hopefully that puts Detroit 3 games ahead of Minnesota and Green Bay. And that should improve the chances of winning the division immensely. Probably to like 95%. And that should put That should put Minnesota's chance back only to 1%, and Green Bay is probably to like a 4.9. Green Bay has to win out of the division, or Detroit has to lose out. I say Detroit wins division. Chicago finished at 4-12. Detroit finished at 9-7. I'm sorry, 10-6. I'm gonna say they won one last game. 10-6. Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago. That's the placings in the rankings. Detroit will win its first NFC North title in 23 years. I'm calling it. I'll have a recap of that game come probably Monday, because I work on Sunday evening. I also have a recap around the other NFL games, and the power rankings come Tuesday and around that times too. It's gonna be interesting. I'll tell you, Week 14 is down to the wire. Playoff huntings, playoff clinchings. This is where the fun begins. Right? If you're an NFL fan, no matter if it's a Detroit fan, Dallas fan, New York fan, I don't really care. This is the fun part of the NFL to watch. December on. Here we go. NFL fans, out.